And we are live. Greetings and salutations, most beautiful of beings, and welcome on this very fine Friday. And especially welcome to Hannah. Hannah, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am so excited about the topics we're going to talk about today. But first, let me introduce Hannah, because, of course, she's far too modest to introduce herself. Hannah Nicole Maehrer, also known as TikTok sensation at Hannah Nicole May, is a fantasy romance author and book talker with a propensity for villains. When she's not creating bookish comedy skits about villains and their assistants, she's writing to Taylor Swift songs. And her biggest passions in life include romance, magic, laughter, and finding ways to include those things in everything she creates. Most days, you can find her with a head in the clouds and a pen in her hand. But today, for one night only, she is joining us. Hannah, thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So Hannah has a book coming out, which is just everything. So Assistant to the Villain. It started out as a series of TikTok sketches. It became not just one novel, not just two novels, but a whole trilogy planned in a setting with a world, with characters, all from little tiny TikTok videos, like character sketches, right?
Yes, that's literally exactly what it was. It started off as like I was trying to think of like funny skit ideas. I was doing bookish skits for like months at that point, and I was trying to think of like what would be like a funny dynamic. And I was like, it would be really funny if I was like an office assistant to like one of the fantasy characters. And I had so many like funny ideas for doing it with a villain, and then lo and behold, it was born that way.
Amazing. So you can right now, if you want to, and you're a TikTok fan, go follow Hannah on TikTok or on Instagram at Hannah Nicole May. Or you can go and check out the book right now. I've dropped the link into the chat, guys. Do go check it out. The blurb is amazing. I will be reading it out at the end. We'll be talking more about the book. But really, I wanted to talk. I want to talk to Hannah about two different things. So poor Hannah is in for a double bill of topics today.
Wow, I'm so excited.
Oh, me too. We're going to talk about that process of what it's like to create character first. Like, how does that work? And then we're going to talk about her phenomenal success on TikTok and how that has changed and affected her journey to publication, traditional publication, and how it's helped, how it's hindered, all the bits and pieces along the way. That's kind of the two conversations we're going to be having today. So, guys, buckle up. Start thinking of those questions, because we will be doing audience questions towards the end of this live stream in, about 45, 50 minutes or so. But for those who haven't seen your TikTok, can you talk a little bit about the kinds of character sketches that you created?
Yeah, so originally it started where I was doing like self-insert TikTok. So I basically, and bookish. So I would do videos where I was like, this is what would happen if I was in an enemies to lovers romance, meaning it would be a disaster because I am not a fantasy character. So not great things would happen. And I did one if I met the morally gray villain, and it was kind of an evolution of that into if I was a morally gray fantasy villain's personal assistant. And after the first few skits, it stopped sort of being me, and I started like putting on almost a character persona while I did it, where it was like, and I'm very bubbly, but this girl is like sees dead bodies and is like, oh, okay, well, it's fine. It's just another day at work. I don't think I quite have that response, but yeah, after a few episodes, it kind of became where in my head, there's this very, very grumpy villain. And then there's this very, very bubbly, sunshine, optimistic young woman working for him who's like trying to like make the best of like some of these very like heavy weighted situations. And sort of the entire cast of characters kind of formed over the series of the skits. Like there in the first episode, I yell at Becky like offhandedly, and that was just like a name I yelled out. And then she kind of became the reoccurring like annoyance for the assistant in like every single episode. And it was sort of how all of the characters evolved. Blade, the dragon trainer, was originally like, I thought it would be a funny bit if the villain got jealous of like the new dragon trainer that was like flirting with his assistant sometimes. And then he became a staple in every single skit. So it kind of like evolved into the characters as they went. And I sort of developed them within each video as I kept doing it, which was really cool.
Fascinating. Had you written a novel before you'd started making these character sketches?
Yeah, and the funny part was I had written a book before, and I had also like started countless projects and not finished them because I wasn't super excited about them. And as someone with attention deficit issues, it's really hard for me to like sit and stay focused on something unless I'm like really, really excited and into it and passionate about it. And I was writing something else at the time, and I was still pursuing becoming an author has been like a dream since I was really, really small. And I was writing something else. And I remember like doing the skits every day, and I was just putting so much time and attention to the skits and the characters and the world. And it was on my mind all the time. I was thinking about it constantly. And I was like, I'm bored writing this story. I need to put it down and let me see what it would look like if I started writing my skits down into a story. And that's sort of how it happened from there.
That's so interesting. What led you to TikTok in the first place? Like, why did you start creating TikToks?
I think I have a really similar story with this to a lot of people, but during the pandemic, I was bored. My roommate was like, you have to download TikTok. You'd be so obsessed with it. And I was like, no, because I'm already on my phone so much. I'm worried I'm going to be like on it all the time. And she's like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's like literally nothing else to do but watch videos on our phones. And I was like, you're so right. And so I downloaded TikTok. At first, it was just like cat videos and I still watch quite a few cat videos if I'm being real honest. They're the best. But I ended up finding like the book side of TikTok. And I originally found like so many creators doing like book recommendation videos. And I'm such a reader. So it was so much fun. I was like, oh, this is great. This is like a little community that talks just about books and about creating and about being passionate about tropes and romance books and like all the same things that I loved. It was like this community of people. And I was like, oh my gosh. So at first I didn't make videos. Like I made like, you know, those funny videos that like you only make for your friends, like to the audience.
Yeah, like all that. In jokes, only in jokes.
Yes, yeah. Only in jokes. I think I like posted a video of one of my best friends like rapping Hamilton or something like that. But all the while I was like watching these book talk videos and I was so into them. And I had watched a couple of people doing like comedy book videos, and I love comedy, and I had always wanted to do something like that, but I wasn't sure like how to go about it. And the very first video I did that kind of had a boom on Book Talk was because the Bridgerton show had just come out, and I was like so obsessed with it. And I love historical romance, so I had read like all the books, and everybody was like theorizing what was going to happen. And I was like, does nobody know that there's a book? Like, I know what's going to happen. So like one night after like one too many glasses of wine, I was like, I'm just gonna make a video and like let everybody know in case anybody wants to know. Thinking like I'm gonna delete it in the morning. And then I woke up and it had like a ton of views, a ton of comments, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll keep making these because they're fun. And eventually I started making Bridgerton like character skits where I would like make joking situations out of the characters. So that was kind of like my first dip into like the comedy part of it. And then it kind of evolved slowly into now I make the assistant to the villain videos. Yeah.
What I love about that story is that when you're doing something you're passionate about, when you're doing something you're creative, that is creative, sometimes it can take you in ways that you don't expect. And saying yes to that can lead you to something that has really got legs.
Yes,
outside so just fun, you know.
Yes, absolutely. That's super true.
I just think that's fascinating. So in your previous writing experiences, were you a plotter or a pantser?
Oh, I am a pantser all the way. And it's super reflected in my videos as well. And I feel like I've told people this before, but like 90% of the Assistant to the Villain skits episodes are all improv. Like a lot of them I did not plan before filming them. I was just like, let's see what happens in this episode. And like I would go off like one joke that I had in my head, and then I would just go from there and see what happens. And eventually what was funny is the skits started off as just like, here's this bit for 60 seconds and then it's over. And then I did one where I left it on a cliffhanger. and I put to be continued. And after like maybe 20 episodes or something like that, and I got like the bug because everybody was like, "What do you mean you can't leave it there?" And I was like, "I feel so powerful." I can't.
The audience
like,
in the power of my hand.
I know, they literally, I was like, you guys shouldn't have told me that because now I feel like I want to do it all the time because I'm like, I've gone mad with power. Like, I need to keep doing this. But I remember the first episode I did, like, the to be continued thing was like the assistant gets like kidnapped by the heroes. And that was like the end of the episode. And it was literally like, I had not planned to do that. My brother and I were talking, and I was like, what's a funny bit for today's episode? And he was like, I don't know, like the villain goes to the doctor or something. And I was like, got it. And I based the whole episode around that joke. And then at the end of the episode, I didn't even know that was going to happen. Sometimes my brain just does things, and I'm like, oh, all right, let's go with it.
Let the gray matter figure it out. It'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing with writing. Like, I think now at this point, and I've been outlining book 2, I plot a lot more now than I used to, just for continuity's sake, and also like making sure everything connects and is cohesive. But I do leave a lot of room for me to just throw in and be creative, because I think that's where I thrive the most. I have friends though that like plan every detail out and they thrive that way. I need room to like wiggle, where I can be like, oh wait, well, I'm going to tentatively say this is what's going to happen, but the characters sometimes like don't listen to me. I don't know, like they don't always do what I want them to do. So I'm definitely a pantser for sure. With like plotter, like if we were doing astrology, I'd be like a Panther moon and like a plotter rising.
Yeah, no, I totally get that.
Yeah.
How did it change writing this book compared to writing your previous books? Because of course you've done so much work on the characters already. How did you go about transferring these characters into a novel?
It was so like I was ready to do it. It was like I was waiting for the moment, because the day that I sat down to write it, I remember I had just moved back to my hometown. I was like sitting in my mom's kitchen, and I was like, I'm just gonna like see what the first chapter would even look like of it, because I just filmed an episode. I was like getting so bored, and then I was like, I'm just gonna sit down and see. And it was the fastest I've ever written anything. I think I wrote, and this is not a repeated experience. This has never happened since this. I don't know who this girl was, but I wrote like 10,000 words in one sitting.
Holy
I
moly.
don't know. I've never been able to repeat that experience. I don't know who that girl was. I don't know what her name is. She's not me. Like, I can't do that.
You need her back, but
yeah, I know, for real, for book 2 drafting. But I remember thinking like, it was so easy. There were parts throughout writing it that I like stumbled a little or had difficulties naturally. But at the beginning, it was so easy because I was like, these characters have been living in my head for months, and I feel like I know them because I got to know them through the videos first. And I feel like I know these characters. Like, I know who Evie is, the assistant. I know who the villain is. I know Blade. I know Becky. Like, I know all of these characters. And I was just like waiting for it to come out of me. Yeah, so that's kind of I felt like it was just, writing it felt like reading my favorite book. So I knew I was on the right path because I was just so excited about it. And I would like read things back and like giggle like I didn't write it. Like I was like losing it, like, oh my God, that's so funny. And I'm like, I did that. Like, I need to get a grip. But yeah.
That's so cool. So did any of the characters change significantly during the process of committing them to paper?
Yeah. So what's even funnier is Tatiana, who is the office healer, is one of my favorite characters ever. I love her because she's feminine, but she's also so strong and witty and funny, because all of those things can come together. She kind of took me by surprise. She wasn't in the skits originally, as she wasn't a character. I like was writing, and then suddenly the assistant was in the healer's quarters, and there was Tatiana, and she was fully formed and like ready to go. And I added her into the skits after I started writing her character in the book. So she kind of had like a reverse situation where like most of the characters started in the skits and then made it to the book, and Tatiana started in the book and then made it back to the skits, which is really cool. The villain, I think, well, the same thing with the skits, like most of them are in Evie's perspective. So you're really only seeing what she's saying. You have an idea because I like hint at like what the other characters are doing and saying, but you don't really know what they're doing. But in my head, I knew what they were doing. I knew what they were saying. So it was kind of like cathartic that I'm like, oh, I finally get to like write what his response would be to what she said, like out loud. Yeah, so I think they became more fully formed on the page. Like they were kind of like just an idea, and then here they are. They feel like a fully fledged character now, writing them all down.
That's so interesting. I wanted to ask, did any characters get left out that were in the skit but didn't make it into the book?
I don't think none of the like main players from the skits, and there's actually like quite a few like side characters that like came in just for like an episode that have like a little mention in the book. Without spoiling anything, like one of the villain's family members makes an appearance in the skits, and he also makes an appearance in the books. He wasn't like in a lot of the episodes, though. Maybe like I don't know, like 4 or 5 total out of like the 200 that I've done. Yeah, so none of the main characters didn't make it in. Like the core group is all in there, and I really felt strongly that they all had to be a part of it because I'm like that dynamic won't work unless they're all together, and I wanted to see them all together too. It was kind of from a little bit of a selfish place where I was like, I don't care if it doesn't work, I'm gonna make it work because they all need to be a part of this.
Oh wow. So you on the topic of I'm going to make it work, actually, you mentioned that sometimes your characters don't do what you tell them. I know this feeling. Our audience knows this feeling. How do you approach and resolve this problem?
I let them do what they want. I'm just like, where do you guys want to go? We'll go there next. I try to like guide the story, but they're sincerely, and people had told me this before, and that's how I think I knew too that I was working on the right project because I had never experienced that. I had friends go like, oh, my characters were not listening to me. And I'm like, what do you mean? You're like their god. You control them. Like, how are you having trouble with that? But they sincerely don't listen to you. Sometimes I'll be like writing a scene and I'm like, it's not working. I don't know why. And I'm like, it's because I want her to go here, but it feels like she wants to go here. And so sometimes I would go with like the flow of like where the characters were going. There were characters that like a side couple in the books or like a hinting at a side couple, a side romance was not originally planned between two of the characters from the skits. They had like instant chemistry when I put them on the page together. And I was like, no, wait, they're not going to be a couple. And then I was like, but maybe they are because I can't like fight this chemistry.
I can't stop them.
I felt like I don't want to keep them apart. Like I feel like a monster.
Nuns and chastity belts can't keep them apart. I
know. I felt like it was like it felt like I'm like it's like Romeo and Juliet. Like I'm ripping them apart. Like they could be together and happy, and I'm ruining it. So yeah, I think I try to follow the guide of the characters. I do have a plan some of the time, but I think it's not even a problem I resolve. I think I just try to go with the curve and I try to be flexible when I'm writing because I think it's when I thrive the most creatively is when I'm being flexible with what I'm doing.
How much rewriting was involved in, I mean, everybody knows that first drafts cannot be the prettiest things in the world. I'm going to put it like that. How much rewriting was involved with the characters as opposed to with, all the other bits of the book?
I feel like in regards to the characters, like after the first draft, a lot of the characters were pretty fully formed. There was some like extra development we did afterwards just to like pull in more to them and give them more. One of the notes I got when editing that I loved, and this was something I was really excited to add, was that they wanted maybe another scene with like the group of them together because we have some great scenes with them together, but I love the group dynamic. So in draft 2, like I went back in and I was like, okay, where would this work? And I found the perfect place where it would work. And I love when that happens because it makes my life easy when you're editing, because if you change one thing, then you have to change like a million. It's the butterfly effect and it changes everything. But this scene fit so perfectly. And then I love when it feels like the scene was always there. I was like, oh, that was just always supposed to be there. I was just waiting to write that part. And yeah, there was a lot of like added like connecting scenes between the characters, just like more, it's a very found family story. Like it's a very much, they're all different and they're coming together and they're forming sort of like a familial friendship bond. So we added some more of those scenes in later drafts. And I was really, really happy to do that because I just feel like it made all the characters feel more connected and cohesive.
Amazing. When you say you were working with a developmental editor?
Yes. So
Yes.
after I finished my first draft, I went back in and did my own edits. But naturally, I'm not an editor. I can write and create something from nothing, but I cannot. If I look at it, I know when something's not working. I don't usually know what it is. And I think that's why editors are absolute wonder because they can literally look at a story and go, this needs to go here, this is here, and that needs to go there. And then you're like, how did you do that? I've been staring at this for like 3 days and I had no idea. So yeah, I was really lucky. I got to work with my literary agent with our first round of edits before we went on to submission. And then I started working with my editorial team at Red Tower, and they are
Nice.
absolutely incredible.
That's
And they are
wonderful.
great because they knew exactly what the story needed without changing any of the integrity of any of the characters or the plot or anything like that. And it was very much a give and take. Like they would give me something and I'd go, okay, and then what about this? And they'd go, perfect, do that. And it was a very collaborative experience. So I actually really enjoyed it because it felt like we were all like making the book together the best version of itself before it was ready for publication. So yeah, it was really great.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. The best work happens with a team, guys.
Yes, I
Teamwork makes the
absolutely
dream work.
agree. Yes, absolutely.
So obviously, this character approach, beg your pardon. Obviously, this character first approach is something that really worked for you. How does development of world building and setting work for you with this character first approach? Where did the world building and the setting kind of fit in for you?
So from the beginning, it felt very much like, and I said this so many times, I feel like, but I feel like it's like a love letter to like all of the fairy tales I loved growing up. And a lot of them had elements of comedy. Like I love fantasy fairy tale stories that pull in like a funny element. So I also, grew up with like the classic Disney movies, like the Disney princess movies. So I knew I wanted it to be sort of from the beginning. I was like, it's an office, but they're in a fairy tale world, and there's a magical forest, and there's magical creatures, and there's lots of colors, and everything's very vibrant and pretty, and there's castles and kingdoms, and I wanted it to feel familiar, the same way that the characters do. Like it was very easy for me to like picture the setting they were in because I think while I was building the skits, I was also imagining like what this world looked like,
Yeah.
and it was supposed to be very much like this is think of like your favorite fairy tale. Like we're basically flipping it on its head and putting it in the same world but with like a different concept, like
Nice.
enchanted forest, castles, knights, all that good stuff. So yeah, it kind of formed with the skits as well. I think when I sat down to do the world building was actually really fun because it felt like the characters were already like not ready. They still had work that needed to be done, but the world was like being built from the ground up around the characters.
That's
So
really
that was
awesome.
actually really fun to do.
Did you do any retroactive work? So you built the characters have a bit of the world in them already. I saw this, one of your comps was Once Upon a Time meets The Office, which I just
Yes.
instantly made me go, I want to read this book, by the way.
Yes.
So well done. But one, you built character first. The characters have some setting and world building imbued within them. Did you go back and uh, sort of reinforce that? Was that part of your process, or did you let the world exist around the characters?
I think I let the world mostly exist around the characters. There were like little tidbits that I loved. Like one of the things I really like about the book is that, and this touches back to like my mental health and things like that, where I feel like when you go through difficult things, and you shouldn't have to go through difficult things to come out stronger, but there's lots of times when you go through something difficult, but you gain something from it. And it
Yeah.
doesn't always have to be like you came out stronger. Sometimes it makes you sad and the world beats you down, and that's totally okay. But I really liked the idea of magic that was awoken by something difficult. Like if you go through something hard, then that is how our magic appears. And that was sort of something I really wanted to implement from the get-go. Something else I love like bright, vibrant colors. They make me very happy. I knew I wanted to build a world around, like, if you notice throughout the book, there's so many themes that connect like the colors to like different meanings. And um, different symbolism with them, like little things, like things that like people might not even notice, but that I knew like going in, that I'm like, haha, that's because of this. Like, this is really just for
Yes.
me. Yeah, yeah. So it's sort of like that, where I had elements going in that I knew I wanted to include. And again, I was thinking of it like this setting, this place that they're in is again like a love letter to like the Princess Bride and Once Upon a Time and movies like Stardust and Ella Enchanted and like all those things that I grew up like really being my comfort movies, like comfort books as well. Yeah, it was it kind of an amalgamation of all of those things.
So the world existed spiritually is as sort of things that you loved long before it hit the page in many ways, from the
Yes,
sound of it.
yes, absolutely. Yes,
That's
exactly.
beautiful. We have a great question from that friend talks, who says, when writing character first, do you run into characters moving too fast to record? How do you keep up with the things that they do?
I run really fast. No, I feel like yeah, there was times, especially because there was so much of them like already developed, even relationship wise. Like in the skits, like the whole thing is like there's this very slow burn relationship between the villain and his assistant, and at that point in the skits, they were like pretty far along in this relationship. So when I sat down to write the book, I had to like rewind backwards a little bit and go back because I'm like the book from the beginning. I was like, I want the book to be able to be read if you've never seen the skits, but I also want it to be kind of familiar if you have seen the skits, like a little like I know something you don't know, like I
Like
like
little Easter
little like
eggs and yeah.
yeah, little like Easter eggs throughout that. Like if you haven't seen the skits, it's totally cool. It'll just go over your head. You won't even notice it. But if you have, you're gonna be like, oh, there it is. So sometimes when I was writing, I was like, God, I feel like I just want them to like be together already. But I'm like, it doesn't make sense yet because it's too soon. It's literally page two. I need to relax. Like but I felt like they were ready to get to that step because they know, like they've been doing this for a while in video format, and they're like, we're in the book now, so let's go, let's get to the point. So I did have to like push myself to like slow it down because I'm like, it doesn't make sense yet for them to be, absolutely madly in love with each other. It has to be a slow, gradual progression. And I love stories like that too, because then you kind of get to see a friendship almost form between the characters before they become, not saying that they are going to become anything, but if they do, yeah. So I did have to like pull myself back, slow them down a little bit because I think they did want to go a little bit faster naturally because at that point in their development, at least outside of the book, they were like already ready to jump in head first. So yeah, a little bit of slowing down was definitely necessary for sure.
That actually brings me on to this next question, which is, how do you manage characters driving the plot to make sure it stays cohesive?
So I follow the characters' cues. Like they all have very different personalities. Evie, for example, is like a very, very impulsive person. So I tried to make sure that each of their different like character traits worked in tandem with our plot. And the plot of the first book is that they're trying to like solve a mystery. Somebody in the office is betraying them to the heroes. They have to figure out who's doing it. So when it came to like sitting down with each character, I was like, all right, well, this is what they're like. And this is how it's going to end. And this is who's doing the betraying. So how can I set this up in a way that each character kind of gets their moment to shine on the page while also working together to solve this problem. So I think having the conflict from the get-go was really, really helpful because I was able to like think out how would they work with this conflict. And it was honestly a lot like how I would do the skits where there would be like a central conflict in one of the skits and I'd be like, how are they going to work around this? Like, what are they going to do? And it was the same sort of process with the book, just a little obviously more extensive than filming a 60-second video for TikTok. But yeah, I kind of had to just really consider who the characters were, what the conflict they're solving is, and then how they work around that.
So a lot of pacing from the sounds of it, a
Yeah.
lot of making sure that external plot and internal plot were lining up.
Yeah.
So we had like good pacing pinions and nobody was, getting ahead of themselves, essentially.
Yes,
Really
exactly.
nice.
And there were points during the editing process where I had to go back in and tweak things because I'm like, it doesn't make sense for her to do this here, even though it works with the plot, it doesn't work with her. So either something plot wise needs to change or something with her needs to change.
Yeah.
Sometimes something with her would change, sometimes something with the plot would change. But it often was like, that's why the drafts later on were so great, because they really helped everyone shine, and it also helped everything make cohesive sense at the end of the day.
Fantastic. Oh, I'm already so eager to read this book and explore these characters. You've sold me on Tatiana. I am there.
I'm so
Let's
glad.
let's move on to the other part of this conversation, which is building a TikTok platform as an author, as your author's platform. This is really, I know it didn't start out that way, but this is really the process
Yeah.
of marketing a book, right?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So when I started, I had no idea that would be how I would be a leg up in selling books and being able to market my book to people. I think like when I started writing, I started sharing. So something else I did a lot was talk about tropes. And I would
Mm,
write like short little stories around a trope that I liked, and I would post it, and everybody would be like, "Oh, I love this one." And it was sort of a way for me to like dip my toe into like showing people my work without like fully committing to it yet. And
right.
it kind of developed into, yeah, I have an author page now, really, where, and I do promote my book a lot. And I think it happened very organically, which is really cool. And it got to a point where in the skits, when I like was ready to start writing the book, it felt like I had this community of people that loved the characters with me and loved the story with me. So I made like an announcement. I was like, "Hey, everybody, like, you know, the skits I've been making, I'm going to make them into a book." And it got such like a really amazing positive response, and it kind of turned into me like almost using it like a video diary to talk about the writing process. So I would do that along the way. And it often like it's an awesome way to market your book, is to like honestly just talk about the things that you're excited about, because often I think people want to get excited with you. I know like when I've watched a few people talk about their books, and I always get so excited because I feel like excitement can be really contagious, and it's really fun to watch people get excited about what they're passionate about. I always think that's very like heartwarming and nice. So yeah, it did happen super organically, and it kind of came to a point where I was like, I'm gonna start sharing excerpts and quotes and like little scenes that I've written for the book and see what people think. And it really did boost me along in the writing process, I think, because I had so many people like championing me and cheerleading me and like making me feel like what I created mattered. And it was such a absolute privilege that I was like trying not to take it for granted the entire time, and making sure I was showed everybody how appreciative I was. But yeah, it's definitely a great place to promote a book or to market your book and to talk about your stories. But I truly think like one of the best ways to promote a project is to like talk about how excited you are about it, because it really shines through, I think, and it makes other people excited with you, which is really beautiful, I think.
What I love about your story is that it really started from this very creative place. It was like, how can I make silly movies that, like silly videos my
Yeah.
friends will love? How can I make funny videos that I enjoy making? But you
Yeah.
also mentioned dipping your toe in. Do you feel like TikTok helped you with your comfort levels in becoming more of a public figure, as it were, which is so
Yeah.
necessary for that, like marketing, author marketing
Yes.
space?
Yeah. I think which is, people might not believe this, but I, growing up, had like the worst stage fright. Like speaking in front of people was so much anxiety for me, and my heart would beat so fast, my palms would get sweaty. The TikTok is so interesting because the pressure doesn't feel there, because I know people are watching, and I know people are like seeing me do these things, but it's like not like the connect isn't quite there, where I'm like, I don't see them. So in my head, I'm like, they don't see me. I know they see me. I'm like, they don't see me. So it definitely for sure helped my confidence. And I think that and I think me and so many other writers as well, and I'm sure you might be able to relate as well, like imposter syndrome just like lives in all of us, I think, which is super unfortunate. But I think that the best ways to combat that are by like looking at something you did and being able to acknowledge like, okay, I did a good job on this. Like I think this was great. And it definitely helped that I was able to like share about it and have people be like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. And I'm like, about something I did? really? Like, that's so nice. So yeah, I definitely think it helped me be more confident and sure of myself. And yeah, it definitely, for sure, it makes it a lot easier to like talk about things you're excited about when people are getting excited with you.
You mentioned that TikTok was great for your productivity and feeling like you could share things. Did it also feel like an accountability tool to you?
Oh yeah. And I think that was again a big part of the writing process. And that's again, it was such a huge privilege to have so many people that were excited about the book because again, with my like my attention deficit issues, it's really nice for me to like be able to like share little things along the way that like propel me forward. Because every time someone would say something like, I'm so excited for this book, like that is so like such a big impact thing for me that I'm like, something you're excited about something I'm writing. That would make me want to sit down and write like all day long. Like it was such a big motivator for me. Yeah, it definitely helped spur on my creativity. I wrote the book in, I think I started in October and I finished in like late March, I think. And I was working at the time as well, not full time, which was great. That helped me like write even faster. My parents were super generous and let me stay with them while I was like figuring everything out. And yeah, so I was working on and off, but it helped me write faster, I think. And it honestly helped me like stay focused because I was like feeling so like passionate and having so much fun. And every time I made something that I was excited about, I would go right to TikTok and be like, guys, I'm going to read you this line I just wrote. Tell me what you think. Like, if you like it. And it just made it like so much more of an exciting process it's almost like when you call a friend, when you write something or when you want to share something with a friend and then you call them and you're like, what do you think? And the feedback just helps like absolutely so much. So yeah, it definitely helped me along in the process for sure.
That's awesome. I know that we have some beans in here who struggle with imposter syndrome. I know we have some beans in here who struggle with accountability. And I know we have some beans in here who struggle with being brave enough to share their stuff. So I hope that they are listening, and folks from the future on
Yes.
the podcast and on the YouTube, I hope you are listening. Even if you don't get to the gazillions of followers that Hannah has on TikTok, it's still a tool that you can use for so many other
Absolutely.
things. And
Absolutely.
I just love that that was part of your journey. I think it's beautiful. So
Yes.
obviously you do have gazillions of followers. Um, the book in itself, the characters sound amazing. I love the concept, and I'm sure that it's going to be amazing, and it's coming out soon.
Thank you.
But obviously you did have this giant TikTok presence when you were querying your book. How do
Yes.
you feel that helped you maybe catch the attention of a traditional publisher? Do you think it was a factor there?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I also think like it is a great way to like kind of present a book. I mean, even if you look at a lot of independently published books that start off as like book talk books, some of them stay independent, which is fabulous. Independently publishing a book is an amazing path to take. There are a lot of book talk books that started off as like, here's an independently published book. It would go viral on book talk and then it would get picked up by like a major trade publisher. So that
Yeah.
does absolutely happen. So I was very publicly sharing about this journey and all the way. And I was deciding back and forth every day if I wanted to try independent publishing, if I wanted to do traditional. There's so much merit to both options. You really just independently have to pick like the right
What's
one
going to
for
work
you.
for you? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And I decided in the end that traditional was the path I wanted to take. So I had started doing all the research about querying and writing a query letter and stuff. And it was very fortuitous because right around when I finished my first draft and I was still editing, I was reached out to by a literary agent who was I believe someone showed him my videos talking about my book and he fell in love with the idea. And he said, as soon as you're done, if you would like to send me the manuscript for consideration, please let me know. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Really, really cool. So I did. I sent it to him, and then I also sent out a ton of queries. And I included the fact that I make them on TikTok also because the skits were a huge part of like how this book came to be. So I wanted anybody that I worked with to understand like there's already people that like love this story and it's so important to me and this is where it came from. This is a huge part of like how it got to this point. So I did query a couple of other agents, and I ended up getting an offer of representation from that first agent I talked with. About a
Nice.
month later, after he read it, he said he loved it. He thought it translated really well from the skits to he's like, the humor is great. And I was like, great. And I had interest from another agent I had queried. I ended up going with the first agent I had talked to, just because it felt like from the get-go, he was so passionate about the story and excited. And he really understood like the background, where it came from. And I have no regrets about the decision. He is absolutely amazing.
Yes, that's what we want.
Yes, yeah. And then we spent the summer like working on it, getting it ready for submission. And in the fall, we went on submission, and a lot of it was waiting. Like it was so much waiting. Got a few rejections along the way. So it's never a guarantee, like having a platform or even people reading for the book. It's never a guarantee, but I definitely think it definitely helps catch the attention of Entangled Publishing and Red Tower, which is the imprint my book is under. And they were just like the perfect fit from the get-go. They loved the book. They understood the concepts. So that kind of, we were like all so excited. And to this day, like they're all the best. It was just all so like fated. They really understood the story, and they understood where the story came from. And they knew like the impact of it. So absolutely, yeah. I mean, the agent reached out to me solely because he had seen some of my videos just talking about my book. So yeah, I think sharing about your book, even during just the writing process, is a great idea if you want to go into traditional publishing, or if you want to market for when you go into independent publishing. Either path, it's great to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again,
Yeah.
if you're going indie, it's even more important to have this kind of
Yes.
platform to build it yourself,
Absolutely.
to be aware that you are the marketing machine. Speaking of
Absolutely.
which, how have you leveraged your fan base to promote the book? Is that something that you've sort of dug into?
Yeah. So I mean, again, I'm super fortunate. I had a lot of people that were like excited and ready and waiting. I don't think I quite understood the impact until like, we started till the book was like officially up for pre-order and stuff, and all of that. And we saw like it hit like the day I announced the pre-orders, like everyone was so excited and being so supportive and like running to support me. So I think like building a relationship with my followers first, like, and building a community with them really made a huge difference in my ability to be like successful, I think, or at least successful so far. Um, yeah, they definitely like, I'm very, very grateful for the community that I have on there, because they're incredibly supportive. They're incredibly kind. And they like, I get comments every day, like, where can I buy the book that will best support you? And I'm like, buy it anywhere that's good for you. The fact that you're even buying it is so nice. Like, thanks so much. So yeah, I think that like generally people like want to root for you and are good hearted. So yeah, I think I built a community of really kind people, and that definitely is helping me along in this journey for sure.
I am so glad that that was your experience, because the internet is not always the friendliest place. Now,
So true.
we are very lucky in our community. People call it the friendliest community on the space, on the internet, sorry. And we are very, very lucky. Again, you seem to have built your own incredibly warm and kind community. Do you
Yes.
have any tips for people who are thinking to try to build this kind of author platform on TikTok or elsewhere? How to create things that people will connect with in a genuine
Yeah.
way?
Yeah, well, I think, and one of the first videos I think I made in regards to like things I liked in books, which were like my favorite videos for a long time, I would do like trope videos. And it was literally so spontaneous. I think don't think too hard about what you're posting. I think that is sometimes the thing that pigeonholes everybody, because you really just think like, what do I want to talk about right now? What am I passionate about at the moment? And again, it was like late at night. I was like laying on my couch alone in my house. I was like bored. And I thought, like, what's something I really like that happens in books? And I was thinking about this specific trope that I've seen quite a few times. And I was like, nobody talks about this. So I made a video literally just rambling for about a minute about a trope that I liked. And I was speaking very candidly, like it was not professional sounding. I was like, do you know which trope makes me like scream? And I said it, put it down, And I feel like the comment section was just full of people that also loved that trope. And we're talking about book recommendations that have that trope, and like even forms of like media, like television and movies, where you can see that stuff as well. So I think honestly, and it might sound cheesy, but talk about what you're passionate about and excited. And I feel like I said that already, but I really do think like excitement really shines through, and it makes other people excited and engaged with what you're talking about, because they want to know like what's got you like so giggly, what's making you laugh so much, what's making you like, because in these videos I was so unhinged. I was just like laying on my couch like giggling to myself like a maniac, and like jumping around like, oh my god, I can't, because that's how like I think it's really true about how like we are when we read a book. So I think people like something that feels familiar, like what they can connect to. So honestly, find the thing that makes you excited, makes you passionate, talk about it. I think that honestly does make a huge difference. And don't think too hard about what you're posting, because
Yeah.
on it, sometimes the videos that do the best are the ones that I put absolutely no thought into. I posted one in a Barnes and Noble parking lot talking about, it was like a literally 20-second video where I said, like, where are the dragons? Like, everybody says, like, live in the real world. Where are the dragons, Susan? Like, where are they? It took me less than 2 minutes to film, cut it together, and post. And it got like 1 million views. And I'm like, it was the lowest effort I've ever put into a video. So I really think, yeah, just like honestly, post whatever like makes you happy. And a lot of the times that will translate really well with readers or with whatever audience you're trying to draw.
I love that because, again, one of the things that we can't help as writers is being our own authentic self, right? Is imbuing our books with us, right? We all do this as writers. So
of course,
if they like you yourself on TikTok, chances are they will like you yourself in your book. And yeah, we're all talking about the same things anyway. Like I make short videos about nerd history stuff, and then I write about nerd history stuff. You make videos about like romance and tropes, and then you write about romance and fun subversive tropes, right? It's the same stuff, and all you need to do is just be yourself.
Yes, that is so true. And I know it's like going back to like grade school when they would say like be yourself. That's the best advice I could give you, and you're like, okay, but it really is the best advice. Like just be authentic, be you. It often carries over incredibly well, and people can tell. Like it's really pulls through the screen for sure.
Absolutely. And I think that one of the nice things about the TikTok revolution, makes me sound 107, but one of the nice things about the TikTok revolution is that it's a platform where it's much more acceptable to just rock up with no makeup and no hair done, and you can wear your pajamas and you could be like, hey guys, I'm an authentic person, I haven't had coffee. And that's okay on TikTok, in a way that Instagram is all about these like impossibly pretty pictures that like I in the best will in the world, it's never going to be an impossibly pretty picture. It's just gonna land somehow. So I think TikTok is really good for that. Was that your experience as well? You felt less pressure to be perfect?
Yes. And I think it honestly too, and I got to a point where I'm a very happy, bubbly person most of the time. And I like to think that that's how I present in my videos, where I'm like mostly bubbly all the time. And there were days where I just didn't feel like posting, because I deal with mental health issues, and anyone with mental health issues knows some days are great and some days are not so great, and it's a constant up and down. So there were times when I would go to film a video, or I would tell everybody, hey, I'm posting this video today, and then instead I would end up like posting a video like being real and just crying and being like, I'm having a bad day, everybody, but it's okay. It's okay to have bad days. Like this is part of it, because it was also very important to me that I didn't present like this picture where I am happy all the time and I never feel sadness and nothing bad has ever happened ever. I think I'm just an eternal optimist, so I try to always look on the bright side of things. But yeah, I feel like I try to be very authentic on my page in terms of that as well. Like it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Some days can be really difficult. Everybody is dealing with something. And it's also a good note to never compare yourself to other people, because you never know what first of all, what privileges other people have, like what leg up in the world do they have, like what are they dealing with behind the scenes. That's when they say comparison is the thief of joy, they mean it, because it's really true. And you truly, especially on the internet, never know like what someone's dealing with off the camera when it turns off. So I try to pull back that veil a little bit as well in my videos too.
I love that. I know that you mentioned this briefly in this interview. You found the online community was really supportive in your sort of mental health journey as well, whilst you were writing the book. Can you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah. So actually, when I started the videos, and again, mental health is an up and a down. So when I started doing the videos, I was actually in a pretty like low place in my life. I think mentally speaking, I wasn't doing super well. I deal with depression and anxiety, and it was not a great time for my depression. But oftentimes when I deal with mental health, the thing that really helps me cope with it is like reading a book and like getting out of my head for a while and not being in my brain for so long, and making the videos and like doing stuff with the characters and putting my focus towards this series that a lot of people seem to like. And the biggest thing was that a lot of people would say in my comment section, like, I had a really bad day and this made me laugh and feel so much better. And it would make me feel like, oh, something I created made someone feel good and happy. And it made such a huge impact that I was like, it motivated. There were days where like I honestly felt like I can't get up, I can't get out of bed. But I would, because I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make a video, it's gonna make me feel good, I'm gonna post it, and I'm gonna make someone else feel good, and that's gonna make me feel good. And it was honestly such a nice support. And again, like those videos didn't cure my mental health or anything like that. I don't want to give anyone that impression. But there are lots of things that help you through those times. And that was this huge, huge impact on me at the time, to have like the ability to make someone else smile even when I couldn't, or when I felt like I was having trouble getting through things. And these characters really felt like, it sounds so cheesy, but I'm like, they felt like my friends. Like they felt like my family. And Evie, like putting on like the assistant hat for a little bit and being like this bubbly, eternally optimistic character really helped me feel more optimistic. I was like, I want all the good things for her, and it's making me want all the good things for me too. And she's brave and she's strong and she's adventurous, and I can be those things. Like I created her, so I should be able to be those things too. So yeah, it definitely helped a ton. The community helped a ton, but it was truly mostly like when people would say, "Oh, I laughed so much watching this." I'm like, that is such a powerful thing when you can make someone feel joy, and that was a big part of the process for me, for sure.
That is so exciting. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for you. It just sounds
Thank
wonderful.
you. Thank you.
So, I'm just thinking, we have some really good audience questions.
Okay.
I want to ask this one. Did audience response factor have an impact in the direction you took characters, or the direction you took plot? Did for example, if an audience really liked a character, did you try and give them more screen time, or?
Yeah. I think in regards to the skits, yes. Like if somebody would be like, "Oh, this would be funny," I'm like, "Oh yeah, we'll put that in the next episode in the skits." I think when it came to the book, it was definitely more of a like, I want this to be like the best thing for everybody to read. I did have to like detach just a little bit in terms of like writing, because the story had to make sense. So I'm like, if something that somebody wanted in the story just didn't fit there, I couldn't make it fit. So I would, yes, with the skits, less so with the book, just because but I always had the audience in mind when writing the book. I always had them in mind, especially in terms of like, anytime I would put like a salute in the skits. And somebody did comment way back, and I'm so like kicking myself that I don't remember the username or like when it was commented, but I remember way back, um, somebody had commented, "Oh, when you publish the book, you should put in the dedication the intro," because every video I do an intro where I say, "This is what I think it would be like if I was the more like your fantasy villain's personal assistant." I do this thing with my head every video, and I did not realize I did this until somebody pointed it out to me, and now I can't stop doing it. But so in the book, in the dedication page, it literally says, "And to all of you, this is what I think it would be like to be the Morally Great Fantasy Villain's personal assistant."
Aww.
So I definitely think the audience had influence. I think if I went down to like details, I can't pinpoint anything specifically, but when it came to the dedication, that was there. And again, there's little like Easter eggs for everybody that has seen the skits throughout the book that they'll be like, "Oh my God, wait, I know what that's from." Like I know where that came from. So yeah, yes and no. I think there was a lot of it where I had to like put my brain away from it for a second and be like, all right, what is going to make most sense for the characters, for the story? I had to put my people pleaser hat away for a little bit as well. But the audience is also just such a huge part of the story. So I did have that in mind for sure while writing it as well.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Win the Win asks, did you already have the next 2 series written when the first one was picked up, or are you still working on those actively? So I know from what you said that once you already had interest while you were still finishing off editing draft 1, which is amazing. How far along are you in that sort of 3-story arc right now? Because you have a trilogy planned. I've seen it's already up on Goodreads. I've seen the covers. It looks beautiful.
Thank you. I'm so excited. Yeah. So when I was writing book 1, I knew like the general direction of like where the series was going to go. I also knew from the get-go when I first started writing it, like there's no way I'm going to be able to leave these characters after just one book. Like I can't do this whole story in one book. And when I was mapping out the other 2, they're all fully plotted. Like they all have full like start to finish of like what generally is going to occur.
Sure. Like the big
book
beats.
2, the big beats that we're going to hit. But again, that's usually how I draft a story. So just to keep continuity again, and like to keep them all cohesive and make sure we're telling the same overarching story throughout each book, they were plotted out as soon as I finished book 1. So I went in with my agent actually. And my agent was like, if you could plot out the other 2, then we can pitch all 3 to publishers, and that would make it a lot easier, especially if you know you want to continue this series. It will have a better chance of like actually being a series then. And I was like, yeah, that's so true. So I sat down one night and I was like, all right, what happens in book 2? Here we go. Here's what happens in book 3. Here we go. So yeah, so book 2 and 3 are fully plotted out, but they weren't plotted out until after I had finished book 1.
That's very interesting. Often the advice in traditional publishing is write a standalone book with series potential, right? That's what they always say. Make sure it's one book that is finished, but you could easily hook on a trilogy. Do you feel that your runaway TikTok success was the reason that your agent suggested, right, make sure there can be more?
I'm sure that was a factor. Absolutely. Yeah. Because we were pitching it along with like, hey, here's this book series. It came from a skit series on TikTok, which is important, I think, to disclose anyway, because it is such a huge part. And a lot of the audience for the book is going to come from the skit series and from my audience on TikTok. Like a lot of people buying the books are going to be from that place. So I definitely think that was, I'm sure, a factor going into it. I think at the end, it was very loose, and then I rewrote a different description for book 2 and 3 after we signed. That was a little bit more concrete, but it was the same just from the beginning. And I did have in my head, like, this is what generally is going to happen all the way till the end. I just wasn't sure the logistics quite at that moment.
No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Great question from that mom friend talks, who I'm sure is echoing many people here in the audience right now and from the future over on YouTube and the podcast. This is good advice, but damn, it's intimidating. What are your tips for getting started in, let's say, in the TikTok space, which is of course where you've thrived? How should beginner authors who feel a bit shy, maybe they feel a bit silly, maybe they don't know what to talk about, how should they start approaching this?
I think it's the same thing with writing, like how they say you just have to start. It doesn't have to be the perfect video the first time around. I posted a couple videos that didn't really take off. Like they were just like posting for fun. And then I kept posting and I kept going, and I would have dips in views where it would get really low, and then I just kept making them and I kept doing them until I would see a leg up again. So I think consistency is a big thing. I think starting is definitely really, really intimidating for sure. I think that, again, don't overthink it. It will be fine either way. You can always delete it. You can always redo it into a different video if you want. I think I've posted videos that I've taken down and then reused something from that in another video that did way better. So there's no saying that you can even draft a video. You can make a video. There's no saying as soon as you make it, you have to post it. You can make it, you can watch it back and say like, do I like this? Is it okay? And the other good thing to note is that, again, I think and I might be idealistic saying this, but I think generally speaking, people are good and want to be supportive, especially of authors or aspiring authors. Like in the book talk space, people can be very, very supportive and kind. And I think focusing on the good things, like you on the internet, you're never going to avoid negativity. It's just not possible. It's the ability to focus not on that, but on the positives. And that can be really difficult. I totally get that. I have trouble with that as well. It's like a daily telling myself, okay, because you can get a million nice comments and then you can get one mean one and then it ruins your entire day. And you're like, oh, well, that's going to knock me out for the next week. But there's 10 other comments saying like, oh, I love this. This is a great video. I love this. So I think like trying to like just put the fear away for 20 seconds of a video, post it, put it down, don't look at it again. And if you don't like it, you can always take it down. That's always an option. You can always redo it.
Yeah. And not to freak anyone out, but this is also really good practice for reviews. Just saying, because there will come a time when your thing is published and people on the internet will say good stuff and bad stuff and dumb stuff and smart stuff about it. And you as an author just need to make the decision to either see it and take it with a pinch of salt or not look at it directly, which is also a choice. I guess it's kind of the same rules on TikTok, right?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's the same rules for life, right? Like it's just a good life rule that like you're never going to please everybody. That was something I learned like later in life, is that I used to bend so much to like make everyone happy. That's impossible. You can't make everyone happy. It just isn't. So, but that's a very freeing realization too, when you're like, okay, I can't make everyone happy. So I'll do what makes me happy and what makes me passionate, and the right people will find me. And it's the same thing with writing. It's the same thing with TikTok. Like it's the same thing with all social media. Yeah, definitely with writing and reviews as well, for sure.
I love that. Okay, guys, it is the moment that you've been waiting for. Are you ready for this? Assistant wanted. Notorious, high-ranking villain seeks loyal, level-headed assistant for unspecified office duties, supporting staff for random mayhem and terror, and other dark things in general. Capitals. Discretion a must. Excellent benefits. With an ailing family to support, Evie Sage's employment status isn't just important, it's vital. So when a mishap with Renadorn's most infamous villain results in a job offer, naturally, she says yes. No job is perfect, of course, but even less so when you develop a teeny tiny crush on your terrifying, temperamental, and undeniably hot boss. Don't find evil so attractive, Evie. But just when she's getting used to severed heads suspended from the ceiling and the odd squish of an errant eyeball beneath her heel, Evie suspects this dungeon has a huge rat. And not just the literal kind, because something rotten is growing in the kingdom of Renadorn. And someone wants to take the villain and his entire nefarious empire out. Now, Evie must not only resist drooling over her hot boss, but also figure out exactly who is sabotaging his work and ensure he makes them pay. After all, a good job is hard to find. Guys, this is the blurb for the book. I could not be more excited. Please tell me when it is coming out, please.
So it comes out August 29th, which is like, it feels like I'm going to blink and then it's going to be here.
Tomorrow.
Yes. And then in the UK and Australia, I believe the release is September 14th.
Amazing. That's my birthday. I can get it for my birthday. Hey, check!
Oh my gosh! That's so funny though, because so many people have said it's like their birthday or around their birthday. And I'm like, that's so funny. We're going to have a big party then. And it'll be everybody's birthday party and the book's birthday party too.
I can tell you that September is the 9th month of the year and January is a cold month. That's all I'm going to say. But moving swiftly on, because we don't want this to turn into a blue Anvil stream. I am so excited. Do you have plans? Is there going to be a book launch? What's the launch? What's going on?
Yeah, so this is actually really special and fun. We're doing a event and signing at the Barnes and Noble I grew up going to in my hometown, which is really, really special. I'm super excited. It's kind of surreal. When they were emailing me about it, they're like, yeah, we're going to do the one at Center Valley in Pennsylvania, and I'm like, that's the one I literally would go to like as a kid. So that is going to be the debut launch day situation. I'll probably also like make my way to all the bookstores in our area and just like see the book in the store. So it's all very exciting.
Well, I can tell you there is nothing like going to a bookshop and picking up your own book for the first time. It is an extraordinary experience. So I wish you joy of it. Enjoy.
Thank you.
It is spectacular and just a wonderful feeling to be like, this is my brain, baby. I made this with my brain. So it's wonderful. As I say, big joy. And everybody who's sitting there thinking, I want that experience. Well, folks, you know what to do. I'm going to say it in a minute. It's got Hannah. It's got world building involved. You know what's going to happen. Hannah, thank you so very much for joining us today. This has been such a fun conversation.
Oh my gosh, I had so much fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Me too. And thank you for your insights. Folks, go find Hannah and follow her on the internet. She makes amazing TikToks. She's over on Instagram as well. If you're not a TikTok fan, I know some people, it's a bit, in Britain, we have this thing called Marmite. Some people think it's disgusting. Some people think it's amazing. TikTok's kind of like that. So if you're not a fan of TikTok, go check out her Instagram. And as I say, the book sounds super fun. If that sounds like your cup of tea or indeed your cup of Marmite, then it is coming soon. Go and check it out. It only remains to say, folks, we are going live tomorrow with a community stream. We have a bunch of new announcements about what's going on with summer camp, what's going on with the Discord, what's coming up in the future. There's all sorts of bits and pieces. And of course, Demetrius and I are going to tell you what we did on our holidays. Yes, we had 2 live in-person community meetups, and we were at Gen Con, which was wild. Guys, I shook Joe Manganiello's hand and I met Ed Greenwood. I can't even. It was amazing. Joe Manganiello is very tall. This I can tell you for free. He is much taller than he looks on the TV.
Wow.
I was like, it's lovely to meet you, enormous person.
Awesome.
Things happen, guys. Also, he has a very small dog, which makes him look even taller. It's like one of those like trompe-l'œil things, the like optical illusions. It's wild.
I love it.
So, folks, that is all coming tomorrow. I am not small, Tiller's rude. I am small. Don't tell anyone. It's fine. Everyone is tall on the internet. Yeah, that's all coming tomorrow. Do tune in at the same time that the stream went live to come and have fun with us and learn everything that's going on, that's coming, and all of those good things. We are going on a raid, and our raid shout is Light Up the Forge. So make sure you shout it out when we get to Anvil Lore Hammering. Yes, Lore Hammering is live. They're doing awesome things. And the amazing Andy Law of Warhammer 40k Fantasy is making things happen. So go and check it out. Make sure you shout out Light Up the Forge. And in the meantime, you know what I'm going to say. Guys, grab your hammer and go world build. See you soon. Bye.